Welcome back to Financial Therapy. It's not just about the money. I'm personal financial planner, columnist, and financial therapist Rick Kaler. Research tells us that 90% of all financial decisions are made emotionally, not logically. For nearly 4 decades, I've been helping people make better money decisions. So what makes my financial worldview different from most financial experts? I blend the nuts and bolts of financial advice with the emotions that drive making them. Good money decisions are not just about the money. So let's get started with today's episode. Welcome back to another edition. So I'm going to say something I don't say very often, and that is I'm going to talk about a topic that I have talked about before. I think it was episode number 45. And I think it's worth visiting. So what I want to talk about are the alarming statements that we so often hear in the media about Social Security going bankrupt, Social Security ending, won't be there in 2034, and all the alarming emotions that go with it. And I want to dig into a little bit of the cognitive biases that are going on, because this is it's something that just doesn't die. And in this political season that we're in, we're just getting bombarded with all sorts of statements that it behooves us to try and figure out which ones are true and which ones aren't. And I'm thinking, I wrote a column on this recently. I'm thinking President Biden has one that he's really held on to tightly, that billionaires only pay 8% in taxes, and that really all of our budget deficits and social program woes would be taken care of if we quadrupled that tax on the rich up to 24%. And it's just blatantly not true. There is a teeny tiny grain in that, which is so complicated to unwind, of where some of that data came from, but it was used completely out of context. And in case you think that I'm picking on the Democrats, Republicans have just as much of ability to land on mistruths and repeat them over and over and over. Biden repeated that particular statement in his State of the Union and was still repeating it in June of 24 in the debate. So it's like when our brain gets into a mindset or gloms on to some confirmation bias that seems to prove our point of view, and we are threatened about that point of view not being right, or we're threatened about having to reconsider our data and potentially face humiliation by saying I was wrong. We just get like the old adage of a dog with a bone that just won't give it up. So I was reminded of this recently around Social Security claims, as I said. And I attended a event locally where I heard the leader of the House, Steve Scalise, who was the gentleman who was shot in the baseball game several years ago by an attacker that had an intention of killing every Republican on the field. And in his remarks, he warned that Social Security will be broke by 2035 if nothing's done. Now, he is not the only politician to repeat this falsehood. You hear it, and you can hear it coming from both parties when it is in their best interest to use that bit of data to further some other point that they're trying to make. When I listen to speeches, and I think most of you know that I'm somewhat of a political junkie, which might feel a little bit confusing given the the need of anybody involved in financial therapy to drop their agenda and be a sounding board and be objective and be able to understand both points of view. It doesn't mean that a person becomes apolitical. And I think for me, what doing my own work, even my own financial work, and skills and training I've gotten has enabled me to better look at both sides of the question and to better question statements that are made. But I still find the political process engaging for me. So when I'm listening to this, sometimes I have no clue if if that's a fact or not a fact. But there are times I have a clue. And that's when they wander off into something that has to do with finance, personal finance, economics, or something that I know something about. And then I have a real challenge because for those of you that follow the Enneagram and know that I'm an Enneagram personality type 1, I'm given to judgment. I am given to also the attitude that, well, I've got the facts and I'm right. And so for me to drop an agenda, and I've talked about this before, especially in working with a client, is almost a spiritual experience to really embody the fact that I don't have the answer. There's parts of me that are just absolutely convinced they have the answer and have been around long enough to find out the number of times we were convinced that we had the answer and we didn't. So that's humbling and helps them being the parts of myself relax sometimes that, okay, we'll entertain the fact maybe we're wrong. So the Social Security issue is always problematic because if you say the Social Security fund is going broke by 2035, you are absolutely right. But that does not mean there will not be any funding for Social Security in 2035 because there is a tax. And if this little Al Gore called it a lockbox, this fund that is paying some of Social Security's benefits, which are over and above what the tax raises. So the tax raises about 83% of what's needed to fund Social Security. The mechanism that's funding the other 17% runs out in 2035. So you can make your case by just changing a few words and cause a lot of alarm. And even if you say the Social Security trust fund is going to run out by 2035, it'll be broke, it'll be busted. That's correct, but it does not mean, because you can extrapolate from that as a listener, that, oh, that means Social Security will be broke. And that's exactly the intention the speaker's trying to send, although then they can come back and say, yeah, but I would, no, I was talking about the fund. So this is all the doublespeak that we get in the manipulation that we are recipients of without really being alert, really being present, really being attentive, really being willing to question. So this I also read this just recently in a Wall Street Journal article by Joe Pinkster. And it said Social Security fears spur these young workers to save more. And it just highlights fears and misconceptions surrounding Social Security. It also brings out the fact there was a 2023 Gallup survey showing that 47% of the U.S. non-retirees believe Social Security won't be able to pay them benefits when they retire. Okay? That's half of pre-retirees say it won't be there. It won't be able to pay. And there was a couple of people brought out in the article that where one gentleman by the name of Chris Loggy said it's like paying a very expensive toll on a bridge that's collapsing before I can cross. It's just not going to be there. There was another couple in the story. And I found this really, really amazing, that they were unable to find a financial advisor willing to model a retirement plan for them without Social Security. I'm like, what? Their names were Amanda and Andrew Mindel, I believe. And I was kind of blown away by that. I kind of got stuck right there. And so they decided, okay, we'll figure it out ourselves and we'll invest and as if there won't be Social Security, and if there will be Social Security, then we'll be surprised. Well, that's a pretty good attitude to take. Unfortunately, their investments included gold and cryptocurrency, which I wrote in my column that they probably are going to overfund. By assuming Social Security won't be there, they'll probably overfund their retirement. But if they're going to invest in gold and cryptocurrency, maybe that overfunding is good, because I don't think those are really great long-term retirement investments. But back to the fact I was just so taken that they couldn't find an advisor that was willing to show them the impact of not having any Social Security on their retirement. What would having 75% funding look like? You could even say 50%, 100%, just all the iterations of Social Security that might be there and how it would impact their plan. And then, really listening to them, helping them with this. I'm remembering I had a client once who, they actually came to me because one of the spouses just had high anxiety and was so fearful if her husband was to die, what she would do with this business. And so I worked with him for years and was really able to help her with that anxiety. And I remember once she says, would you be willing to show us what would happen to us if his business sold for nothing? It's very similar to this situation. And the business at that time was worth $1 million. And I said, sure, let's do that. So we popped in what it would look like if the business went to nothing, which was highly improbable, and showed that, if I remember right, I think they'd have total income from everywhere of $80,000 a year. And I remember her saying, oh, wow, we can live on that. And the anxiety just dissipated. Roll ahead 5, 10 years. Their business went to absolutely nothing. Her worst fears came true. And she derived so much peace of mind from the fact that I was willing to say, yeah, let's see what would happen if it went to nothing. And we still talk about that to this day, how ironic that was that the worst case scenario happened. So that this is the job of a financial therapist, a financial life planner, to listen deeply to clients and go there with them. My wife tells me I'm a pessimist. I don't think I'm a pessimist. I think I'm a realist. But when something happens, it's true that I don't go to the best outcome. I immediately go to the worst outcome. And then I work back from there. And it's as if, well, if I can kind of sort through what the worst outcome is with this and accept that, then I can start looking at other alternatives. And I usually do that pretty quickly. Where I get hung up is when someone wants to argue with me about what that worst outcome is. And in most cases, the worst outcome, however highly improbable it might be, typically would have a grain of probability, a grain of possibility, I should say, a grain of possibility. And what I need is for somebody to say, oh yeah, that could happen. Asteroid could hit the Earth. That's true. Which drops my internal resistance, trauma, wounding to not being heard. And then I can work back. And I'm not the only person like this in the world. So when one of my clients goes there, it's really important that I'm able to go there with them and then work back from there. So anyway, back to the topic at hand. Social Security is not going to go bust. Now, is there a chance? Is there a possibility nothing will be there in 2035? Sure. I think there's a possibility that could happen next year. The probability is highly unlikely. And when doing Social Security planning for a younger client, it's our default at our financial planning firm to plan for 75%. Today it's 83% of what's raised in the payroll tax that we pay. That tax will fund 83% of current Social Security benefits. Also, Social Security, and I wrote about this recently, you may have read the articles that when Social Security was put on back, I think it was in the 30s, I believe the Social Security age was 65, and I believe at that time the average life expectancy of a male was 67. All right? So they never really intended for Social Security to pay out much. Well, where are we today? Social Security retirement is 66, and the average life expectancy of a male is 83. Now, if we were designing Social Security today, we'd be designing Social Security to start paying, say, at age 80, to be the same as when it was first enacted. Well, obviously, that program has changed massively, and it is now the retirement plan of the masses. And for that reason, you're not going to see it cut hugely. And I can hear some of you thinking, yeah, but what about the debt? We just won't be able to afford that. And I would point you to, I'm sure I've done a podcast on modern monetary theory and the fact that the U.S. can't go bankrupt. If we have a debt in dollars, we will always be able to manufacture or create the dollars to pay the debt. The big issue in that case is inflation. That's what we have to be concerned about. But I'm not going to get off into that. You can go take a listen to one of those podcasts if you want a little bit more. So there's plenty of things that can be done to, quote, fix Social Security. We can raise the Social Security payroll tax. We can raise the cap on the tax. We can extend the date of retirement by a year, although Paul Ryan proposed moving the retirement age to, I think it was 69, and this may have been 10 years ago, 15 years ago, and they had pictures of of a character of him with grandma in the wheelchair pushing her off of a cliff to raise the Social Security age by 2 years by 2050. So I think at that time there was at least 30 years to gradually do this. I mean, this illustrates the silliness that we undertake in pushing our agenda. So why, what's going on here with our brain when we continue to repeat mistruths and false statements? And there's a lot of cognitive biases at play. And I've been getting into these more and more in podcasts because I don't have space in the column to really get into the emotions that are going on. But we know the availability heuristic is that people tend to overestimate the likelihoods of events coming to mind. And again, this is due to the frequent repetition of the falsehood. I think the strategy is used in brainwashing by various governments and with prisoners of war, that if you just repeat a falsehood often enough, that the availability heuristic, we go back to the last thing we've heard, and what we've heard has been this misstatement. So that causes us clinging to these falsehoods. Confirmation bias is something I've talked about a lot. We see it all the time around us and within us, where we seek out and remember information that confirms our pre-existing beliefs. So if somebody already believes Social Security is in trouble, they're more likely then to notice and remember information that supports this view. They hear the House leader speaking that it's going to be out of money by 2035. Well, yeah, I knew Social Security was in trouble. And that confirms that bias. We have negativity biases, or we give more weight to negative information than positive information. I'm just struck when I'm listening to politicians just at the extreme and the extremism of the remarks. I can be listening to Republicans rail on Democrats, and if I played that transcript back and I just would insert Republicans for every time Democrats said, it's the same accusations on both parties. It's duality thinking. It's either or thinking, black and white thinking. The other is completely wrong. It's also very, very old, ingrained in humanity, and it's quite a feature of biblical principles called scapegoating. And scapegoating is where you are making one thing wrong. In other words, if we just got rid of this one goat that we put all of the sins upon back in biblical times, we take it out and kill it. We get rid of the thing that's wrong, the person that's wrong, the class that's wrong, then everything will be fine. You see this all the time. You see this everywhere. In any organization, you will see this, that if just so-and-so could get rid of so-and-so, we'd be fine. And when so-and-so is gotten rid of, there's a new person that's going to take the spotlight. of being the scapegoat. So just, in all of this, all underneath all these cognitive biases are emotions. There's fear, which is a powerful motivator, especially when I'm trying to win people to my point of view. It's very, very, very effective and can work very, very well in the short term, creating anxiety about the future, anxiety about Social Security, just repeating that alarming information about Social Security can be a way for people to express their anxiety about their financial future. There's all the frustration and anger that is under that, lack of trust, distrust about government and institutions can lead people to be more receptive to claims that Social Security is failing, and the opposite is true. If I can paint a picture of how Social Security is failing and how it's kind of a smoke and mirrors Ponzi scheme program, then that also then can create general distrust in government and institutions. And then from all this, just a sense of hopelessness that can be painted. And of course then that the hope is in electing whoever, electing me, because I can fix it all. So just some thoughts that I've had today regarding this, and an encouragement to all of you to take deep breaths, especially when you're listening to politicians, because this is in this unprecedented time, at least unprecedented in our lifetime, of polarity in this country that can just be so anxiety creating. And I'm not suggesting that you turn off the television or the news and not pay any attention. And it can be very, very tempting. But to take what's being said with a grain of salt and maybe focus on the thing that's causing the most fear, the most anxiety, a statement about whatever it is. And then maybe do a little research on that for yourself. Use ChatGPT 4.0. It'll cost you a little bit, but I find it's really effective at if you just put in, I'm really concerned about, just put in whatever the topic is, and I'd like to know more about this, or is this true, or give me both sides of this particular thought. Tell me more about Social Security going bankrupt. Is it really going to go bankrupt? And usually it does a pretty good job of doing the research, bringing out each side. You can use that for some fact checking. Now you have to fact check the fact checker every once in a while when it's AI. But it's getting better and better, especially if you use a paid version. And set your confirmation bias aside, as hard as that might be, and do a little research. And probably that's going to help with the anxiety as you begin to see the other viewpoints, or here's another fact I didn't know. Here's a fact I didn't know. So I hope that's helpful. Thanks so much for joining me today, and I look forward to being back with you soon. Thanks for joining me, Rick Kaler, for another episode of Financial Therapy. It's not just about the money. This is where I combine the nuts and bolts of financial advice with the emotions that drive making them. Remember, every financial behavior, whether it appears illogical to you or others, makes perfect sense when we understand the underlying beliefs, feelings, and thoughts. Sign up for my weekly blog at financialawakenings.com. I hope you'll join me again for our next episode.